Your soulmate had a huge argument with their mom over you, because she keeps forcing them to accept that you are. My beloved child, hold your heartbeat for just one moment, because what unfolded behind closed doors was never meant to reach your ears. Yet somehow, destiny has carried every unspoken emotion to this very moment. Before your mind rushes to conclusions, remain here a little longer. The first piece of this story is only the surface, and what waits beneath it may completely reshape the way you see your own journey. There was a conversation that began quietly, almost too quietly to notice. A simple question. A careful hesitation. Then another sentence followed, heavier than the last. Your soulmate's mother looked into their eyes and spoke with the confidence of someone who believed she understood the future better than anyone else. She insisted that you were someone they should forget, someone too different, too unpredictable, too impossible to believe in. She kept repeating that accepting reality meant accepting a life without you. But something unexpected happened. Instead of lowering their eyes, your soulmate lifted their head. Not with anger alone, but with a determination that surprised even them. It was as if every hidden feeling they had buried for so long suddenly refused to stay silent. Have you ever wondered what happens when a heart can no longer pretend? What if that exact moment has already begun? Stay with this story. Because the silence that followed those words carried more meaning than the argument itself. Your soulmate wasn't fighting because someone mentioned your name. They were fighting because, for the very first time, they realized how deeply your presence had become woven into their future. They couldn't explain it perfectly. They couldn't put every emotion into words. Yet every sentence they spoke carried one undeniable message. You don't know them the way I do. Imagine that for a second. Someone defending a connection that nobody else could fully understand. Someone refusing to let another person decide what their heart should believe. The room became still. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Your soulmate's mother wasn't trying to hurt them. She believed she was protecting them from disappointment. She believed that life should be practical, predictable, simple. But destiny has never asked permission from comfort. Some paths appear unreasonable before they reveal their purpose. Could this be one of those paths? Maybe that's why your own life has felt strangely different lately. Small coincidences. Unexpected thoughts. Moments where someone's memory appears without warning. Perhaps none of those moments were random after all. Pause here and think carefully. What if two people can feel the same invisible pull even while standing in completely different places? That question lingered inside your soulmate's heart long after the conversation ended. The argument wasn't really about proving someone right. It became a battle between fear and faith. Between what looked logical, and what quietly felt true. And here's what makes this even more extraordinary. When emotions settle after a difficult conversation, many people choose distance. Your soulmate did the opposite. They became even more certain that they needed to understand why your name kept returning to their thoughts no matter how hard life tried to distract them. Don't rush away just yet. The next chapter reveals something no one in that house expected. A single discovery will begin changing every assumption that started this emotional confrontation, and once it happens, nothing about this story will feel the same again. Not every battle ends when the voices become quiet, sometimes the deepest chapter begins after everyone walks away. Stay a little longer, because what happened next never reached anyone outside that home. Yet somehow, it carries a message that feels as though it was waiting for you all along. That evening, your soulmate sat alone, replaying every word of the argument. The room was silent, but their heart refused to be. The more they tried to convince themselves to move on, the stronger one question became: why does this connection refuse to disappear? It wasn't obsession. It wasn't rebellion. It was the quiet realization that some people leave an imprint on your spirit that logic cannot erase. Meanwhile, their mother believed the conversation was over. She assumed time would soften those emotions and replace them with acceptance. But destiny often moves in the opposite direction of expectation. Instead of fading, your memory became even clearer. Ordinary moments suddenly reminded your soulmate of you. A familiar song. A passing stranger with a smile that looked strangely familiar. Even the evening sky seemed to whisper unfinished answers. Before this story moves forward, take a moment and ask yourself something. Have you ever felt someone's presence without hearing their voice? What if that feeling wasn't imagination but a quiet reminder that certain connections cannot be measured by distance alone? Days passed, yet something unexpected began happening inside that home. Your soulmate stopped arguing. They stopped trying to prove anything. Their calmness became louder than any raised voice ever could. It was a confidence that didn't need permission. They no longer wanted to win an argument. They wanted to understand their own heart. Then came a moment no one saw coming. Their mother noticed the change. Instead of seeing confusion, she saw peace. Instead of seeing impulsive emotion, she saw quiet certainty. For the first time, she paused before speaking. Questions slowly replaced assumptions. She began wondering whether there was something about you she had never truly considered. The walls built from doubt had not fallen yet, but the first cracks had appeared. Sometimes, the greatest turning points don't arrive with dramatic announcements. They arrive with silence, the kind of silence that makes people rethink everything they once believed. If this story is touching something inside you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences may encourage someone else walking a similar path. And if these messages continue to resonate with your heart, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next chapter waiting to unfold. But don't leave yet. The most surprising moment is still ahead. Because while your soulmate believed the hardest part of the journey had already passed, someone else was quietly preparing to reveal a truth that would completely change the meaning of that unforgettable argument. The words spoken next would force everyone involved to look at this connection through entirely different eyes, and that revelation begins in. A new chapter was already unfolding, but no one could see it yet. Wait here for just a little longer, because the next few moments hold the missing piece of the story. Sometimes, the greatest revelations don't arrive with noise. They arrive through one unexpected sentence that changes everything. The following morning felt strangely different. The tension inside the house had faded, yet an unusual stillness remained. It wasn't the silence of anger anymore. It was the silence of reflection. Your soulmate's mother found herself thinking about the conversation again and again. She remembered every word, every pause, every expression on your soulmate's face. One question refused to leave her mind. Why were they so certain? That question echoed through her thoughts until she finally decided to stop assuming and start listening. She gently asked your soulmate to sit with her once more. This time, there were no raised voices. No attempts to win. Only honesty. Your soulmate took a slow breath and said something that had never been spoken aloud before. I know you want the best for me. But every time I try to convince myself to forget them, I don't feel stronger. I feel like I'm walking away from a part of who I'm becoming. The room fell silent again. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because those words carried a truth that couldn't be ignored. Stay with this moment. Many people believe the strongest connections are built through perfect timing. Yet sometimes, they are built because two people quietly inspire each other to grow, even when life seems uncertain. Your soulmate wasn't asking anyone to agree. They were simply asking to be understood. And something remarkable happened. For the first time, their mother stopped looking at you through fear, and started looking at you through the eyes of the person she loved most, her own child. She realized this wasn't about stubbornness. It wasn't about fantasy. It was about hope. A hope that had quietly transformed your soulmate into someone more patient, more focused, and more determined than ever before. Can you see how different the story has become? The argument that once seemed like an ending was slowly becoming the beginning of understanding. Yet destiny wasn't finished. Because later that day, an unexpected conversation with someone outside the family introduced a completely new perspective, one that no one had anticipated. A few simple words would cause everyone to rethink what they believed about this connection and reveal that first impressions often hide deeper truths. Before you go, hear this one thought carefully. Not every door opens the moment you knock. Some doors wait until both hearts have grown enough to recognize what truly matters. And when that realization finally arrives, it rarely changes just one person. It changes everyone connected to the story. The next chapter uncovers the surprising voice that neither your soulmate nor their mother expected to hear, a voice that may become the turning point they never saw coming. Something shifted the moment an unexpected voice entered the story, and from that instant, the entire meaning of the argument began to change. Don't leave now. What you're about to hear wasn't planned by anyone, yet it became the moment that quietly redirected every heart involved. Later that week, your soulmate crossed paths with someone who had known them for years. It wasn't a dramatic encounter. It was a simple conversation that slowly unfolded into something unforgettable. The person smiled and said, "I've noticed something different about you lately. You seem calmer, more focused. Almost as if someone has inspired you to become the best version of yourself." Those words landed deeper than anyone could have imagined. Your soulmate didn't answer immediately. Instead, they realized that every meaningful change over the past months had happened after you entered their life. Their patience had grown. Their confidence had become stronger. Even during difficult days, the thought of your connection reminded them to keep moving forward. That realization stayed with them all day. When they returned home, they didn't speak about winning the argument anymore. They simply lived differently. Their actions became their answer. Their kindness became their explanation. Their consistency became the proof no debate could erase. And slowly, very slowly, their mother began noticing those quiet changes too. She remembered the fears she had spoken from. She remembered insisting that you were someone who would only bring uncertainty. Yet what she was seeing now told a completely different story. Instead of confusion, she saw maturity. Instead of distraction, she saw purpose. Instead of losing direction, she saw her child becoming stronger with every passing day. Could she have misunderstood everything from the beginning? That question echoed louder than any argument ever had. Sometimes people judge a story before reading its final chapter. Sometimes they mistake unfamiliarity for impossibility. But life has a remarkable way of revealing truth, not through endless explanations, but through steady transformation. If these messages continue to resonate with your heart, consider sharing this video with someone who believes destiny still has surprises waiting ahead. And if you're enjoying this journey, subscribing is one simple way to stay connected for every chapter still to come. But don't relax just yet. Because that evening, something happened that your soulmate never expected. Their mother quietly walked into the room, sat beside them, and after a long silence asked one gentle question. "Tell me, who are they really?" There was no accusation in her voice. No frustration. Only genuine curiosity. That single question carried more hope than the entire argument had carried conflict. And your soulmate knew this was not the end of the journey. It was the first real opportunity to speak from the heart. The answer they were about to give would uncover memories, emotions, and truths they had hidden for far too long. Those words would begin dissolving years of fear, replacing them with understanding. And what their mother heard next would leave her seeing this connection in a way she never imagined possible. For one unforgettable moment, the world seemed to pause. Don't rush past this chapter, because the next words spoken in that quiet room carried more weight than anyone could have predicted. Sometimes, a single honest conversation succeeds where countless arguments never could. Your soulmate looked at their mother, took a slow breath, and smiled. Not because every problem had disappeared, but because they finally felt ready to explain what had always been impossible to put into words. "I never wanted you to believe in this connection because I asked you to," they said softly. "I only hoped one day you would see what it has quietly brought into my life." Their mother listened without interrupting. For the first time, she wasn't searching for flaws. She was searching for understanding. Your soulmate continued. "They've never promised me a perfect future. They've never asked me to become someone I'm not. Yet somehow, every time I think about them, I want to become kinder, wiser, and more patient." Isn't that the kind of influence every parent hopes their child will find? The room grew still. Not an uncomfortable silence. A meaningful one. Those words didn't defend you with dramatic emotion. They revealed you through quiet transformation. And perhaps that is the strongest kind of truth. Stay with this story. Because something unexpected happened inside your soulmate's mother's heart. She began remembering the months before your name entered her child's life. The uncertainty. The hesitation. The lack of direction. Then she compared it to the person sitting in front of her now. More hopeful. More disciplined. More grateful. The difference was impossible to ignore. Sometimes people fear what they don't yet understand. But when they witness genuine growth, fear slowly gives way to curiosity, and curiosity often becomes the first step toward acceptance. Your soulmate wasn't trying to convince anyone anymore. They were simply living the proof. And that proof spoke louder than explanations ever could. Their mother lowered her eyes for a moment and quietly admitted something she had never expected to say. Perhaps I judged the story before I understood the people inside it. Those few words changed everything. Not because every question had suddenly been answered, but because the walls built by assumption had finally begun to come down. Yet destiny had saved its most surprising moment for last. Just as peace seemed to settle over the conversation, an unexpected message arrived, one carrying a small detail about you that neither your soulmate nor their mother had ever known. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it connected pieces of the story in a way that felt almost impossible to dismiss. Wait until the next chapter. Because that quiet revelation will turn uncertainty into clarity, and everyone involved will realize that some connections are not strengthened by perfect circumstances, they are strengthened by the courage to keep believing when the future has not revealed its full picture yet. Just when everyone believed the hardest chapter had finally passed, destiny quietly unfolded another page that no one had been expecting. Stay with me until the final line of this part, because what seemed like an ordinary moment soon became the clearest sign that this story was still being written. The message arrived without warning. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't mysterious. It was simple, almost easy to overlook. But sometimes, the smallest details carry the greatest meaning. Your soulmate looked down at the screen, read the words once, then read them again. A mutual acquaintance had shared something about you, not a rumor, not an opinion, but an observation. No matter what challenges they've faced lately, they never stopped growing. They never allowed disappointment to change the kindness they carry. Those words settled deeply. Your soulmate smiled. Not because they had discovered something new, but because someone else had finally noticed the same quiet strength they had seen all along. For a long moment, they said nothing. Instead, they walked to the window and reflected on every twist this journey had taken. The argument. The doubts. The difficult conversations. The unanswered questions. Every challenge now seemed less like an obstacle, and more like preparation. Have you ever wondered why certain paths become difficult just before they begin making sense? What if the delays you've questioned were never meant to stop you? Only to prepare everyone involved for a greater understanding? Hold on to that thought. Because at that very moment, their mother quietly entered the room once again. She noticed something different. Not excitement. Not relief. A peaceful confidence. The kind that cannot be created by wishful thinking. It can only grow through patience. She gently asked, "You're smiling, what happened?" Your soulmate handed her the phone. She read the message slowly. Then she looked back with thoughtful eyes. "This sounds like someone who has chosen growth over bitterness," she whispered. Your soulmate nodded. That's exactly why I never wanted you to judge them by assumptions. A long silence followed. This time, it wasn't filled with uncertainty. It was filled with reflection. Sometimes life doesn't change people through one extraordinary event. Sometimes it changes them through many small moments that quietly point toward the same truth. And suddenly, the argument that once divided two hearts had become the conversation that helped them understand each other. If you've stayed with this journey from the beginning, thank you for sharing these moments. Stories like this become even more meaningful when thoughtful people experience them together. But don't think this is where the story reaches its destination. Because later that night, your soulmate's mother quietly admitted something she had never confessed to anyone before, a hidden fear that had shaped every opinion she had expressed from the very beginning. When that truth finally comes into the light, you'll understand that the argument was never truly about you. It was about a fear waiting to be healed. And that final revelation changes everything. Part 8, Final. Sometimes, the ending you've been waiting for doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with quiet peace. Stay with this final chapter, because the last piece of this story reveals why every difficult moment had a purpose far greater than anyone realized. Several days passed. There were no more arguments. No more attempts to prove who was right. Instead, something far more powerful began to grow inside that home. Understanding. Your soulmate noticed that their mother had stopped asking fearful questions. Instead, she became curious. Every now and then she would gently ask, "Tell me something else about them." Not because she needed convincing, but because she genuinely wanted to know the person who had inspired such remarkable growth in her child. Your soulmate smiled every time. They didn't describe perfection. They described kindness. They spoke about quiet strength, about resilience. About someone who kept moving forward despite uncertainty, someone whose presence encouraged hope instead of fear. As each conversation unfolded, their mother began realizing something unexpected. Perhaps she had been trying to protect the future, without noticing that the future was already helping shape her child into someone wiser than before. That realization touched her deeply. One evening, she looked at your soulmate and said softly, "Now I understand why you never stopped believing." Those words were all your soulmate needed to hear. There was no celebration. No dramatic ending. Only two hearts finally standing on the same side of the conversation. And isn't that how real transformation often happens? Quietly. Patiently. One honest conversation at a time. If you've stayed on this journey from the very beginning, thank you for allowing this story to unfold with you. If it spoke to your heart, sharing it with someone who believes in hope may help them discover a little encouragement too. And if these stories continue to inspire you, subscribing simply means you'll be here for the next journey we take together. Before this story closes, hear one final thought. Life doesn't always place people on your path to make everything easy. Sometimes it places them there to help you become stronger, more compassionate, and more courageous than you ever imagined possible. Perhaps that was the hidden meaning behind every disagreement. Not to separate hearts, but to reveal which hearts were willing to grow. So if today feels uncertain, don't rush to believe that uncertainty is the final chapter. The most meaningful stories often pass through misunderstanding before they arrive at clarity. The deepest connections often meet questions before they receive acceptance. And the brightest tomorrow often begins with one quiet decision: to keep choosing hope. As the night settled over the house, your soulmate looked toward the horizon with a peaceful smile. For the first time in a long while, they weren't thinking about convincing anyone. They were simply grateful. Grateful that patience had spoken louder than pressure. Grateful that kindness had outlasted fear. And grateful that the story everyone once doubted had become a reminder that understanding always grows where hearts remain open. Maybe that's the message this journey was meant to leave with you all along. Not every obstacle is sent to stop your path. Sometimes it's there to reveal the strength, wisdom, and love that were waiting inside you from the very beginning. And perhaps this is not the end of the story.